737, Big 550, KTRS. Kathy Helbig is our real estate guru with all the things going on in real estate. Always good to get a couple helpful hints so you are filled with knowledge when you're buying or selling. Good morning, Kathy Helbig.
Good morning.
Contingencies.
Yes.
The good, the bad, and the ugly.
Right. So this market right now is very ripe for making fast decisions, trying to get your offer seen above somebody else's offer.
Right.
And one way to do that is by eliminating contingencies. But a lot of people don't really understand what they're doing. So I want to make sure we kind of go through the typical contingencies and talk about the pros and cons of taking them off, putting them on, and what your protection is.
Okay.
So obviously the most, the first one that everybody knows about is is building inspections. So in the first 10 days of a contract, you have the right to do any and all inspections. During that time frame, you then can ask the seller to make repairs. You can accept the house as is, or you can terminate your contract. A lot of times now, people that are in really, really hot markets are asking people to waive that contingency. That is not usually a good idea to do because you don't know what you're buying.
The owner says, waive this contingency.
Right. They've got 15 offers on the table, so they're like, who wants to take off all these contingencies?
Right.
The building inspection one is one we do not recommend you take off. However, you can shorten those time frames, so that way at least gives you a little due diligence period to go in there and see what you're getting. You can amend that contingency, which a lot of people don't think about. You can take out the automatic cancellation clause. That's something that sometimes gives you an edge.
Right.
Basically saying, as long as there's nothing major wrong with the house, I'm not going to just terminate for no reason. Or you can shorten that 10 days to 5 days, or you can shorten the resolution period, because in the seller's mind, what they're thinking is, my house is ultimately sitting off the market for as much as 20 days because you have 10 days to do the inspections and 10 days to negotiate. So if you're going to come in and be squirrely or come in and ask me to make all these repairs that I'm not going to do, I'd rather know about it sooner than later so I can kick you to the curb and move on to the next contract.
Right. But you don't want to just do away with it, because as the seller, you want to make sure you have some protection if the roof is ready to fall off.
As the buyer, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So another one is appraisal contingencies. So that's getting tricky now too. So people are coming in and asking for overlist, or they're taking overlist offers.
Right.
And then a lot of times those buyers will also add in closing cost, but they'll have an appraisal writer that's attached. Well, I can tell you there's certain pockets of town that's getting $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 over list price.
Right.
And those houses are not most likely going to appraise.
Right.
So you're not fooling anybody when you go in with a $40,000 over asking price and an appraisal writer to think that you're probably really going to pay $40,000 over asking price. So those sellers oftentimes will come back and say, take off the appraisal writer.
Right.
So you have to understand, and some people do that. They just get caught up in the game and they're not, they're not worried about it.
That's a whole other issue, though. Appraisal. If the house is getting $40,000 over list, then the appraisal should be $40,000 over list, because
you would think, because it's what the market's bearing.
Right.
But what happens a lot of times, and sometimes it works out. But really, how appraisers mostly work is they're looking at the past sales.
Right.
And so when the current sales are skyrocketing so fast, the past sales aren't catching up with them. So sometimes it's a vicious circle and pulls you back.
Okay.
Sometimes we can negotiate it and get it to go through. But my point with it, of you doing it and taking that appraisal writer off, is what a lot of people don't understand. If it doesn't appraise, your lender is only, it's one thing if it's cash, but your lender is only going to lend to what the appraised value was. So your 20% down, all that, whatever, 10% down is off the appraised value. So if there's a $40,000 gap between the appraised value and what you're actually paying for the house, not only are you putting a down payment down, but you're making up that $40,000 in cash.
Wow.
A lot of people don't get that.
Right.
So be careful when you pull these things off without knowing what you're doing.
Wow, that's kind of a biggie.
You're right. And another little tricky one that we've been kind of doing lately is when people are buying something at list price, they have to pad in their closing costs because they don't want to come out of pocket with that.
Right.
So let's say a house is $150,000. They have $5,000 in closing costs and prepaids and all that stuff. So now they say, well, we'll give you $155.
Right.
And you credit us back that closing cost, so that way we don't have to come out of pocket. But now the house has to appraise for $155, not $150.
Right.
So you got to keep that in mind. If you're in a market where that's not really a question, you can find some comps that we can probably get that through. no problem. But there's times that we're already pushing the limits as it is. And then when you pad that extra amount on for the buyer, you might now come back 2 or 3 weeks later, and then the house only appraised for $150 or $149. Now you've agreed to pay the closing costs for the people. And then what the appraisal writer says is, if you don't come down to my appraised value, then I can terminate the contract. So you're put in a position of, now you padded it higher for the buyer. Now you have to reduce your sale price. So we have little tricks of the trade that we do to try to protect you on those things too, but it's not pulling off the appraisal writer.
Right.
Other contingencies are finance contingencies. You want to make sure you have enough time in for that. People are coming in and saying, no finance contingency. That does not mean you're necessarily paying cash for the house. That's a big confusion that we hear too.
Right.
All you are saying is, yeah, I might pay cash, I might get a loan, but the bottom line is, I'm not making it contingent on buying your house.
The point is, I'm going to have money, don't worry about it.
I'm going to have money, don't worry about it.
Right.
But you got to back yourself up. You can't just go make those type of offers and then not have.
What happens if you say that and then you can't get financing? They can't make you buy the house if you can't afford it.
Well, they can sue you for losses and damages, and that's another misconception. People go, so what? I'll lose my $2,000 earnest money deposit. Big deal. Yeah, ultimately that's the minimum that will happen to you. But if that seller wants to take it a step further and say, hey, man, I picked your contract out of 10. You had me sit on the market for 25 days before you found out you couldn't get your loan. Now my house is back on the market. Now I don't have 10 other people wanting to buy it. Now I've sold my house for $15,000 less than what my contract was with you. In addition, I've paid property taxes, utilities. I switched agent, paid a higher commission. All of that stuff is losses and damages. So that $2,000 can turn into $30,000.
All right. Anything else?
Home sale contingencies are hard to get through right now, so give us a call and we can talk through that.
Yeah, so hey, I'll buy your house first. I have to sell my house.
Right.
Sorry, not
right.
gonna. I'm not waiting for you to sell your house.
So we have strategies for you there, but that is a tough one to push through in this market right now.
All right, you're giving me a headache, so chances are you're giving everybody else a headache. So call Kathy Helbig. She'll help you out. Her full team will help you out. Buying, selling, whatever it may be. 314-276-SOLD or KathyHelbigGroup.com. Good stuff today.
Thank you.